Well, my clock shows that it's 9 o'clock, and I know everyone is anxious to get back to their kids and enjoying their summer. So we will go ahead and get started. My name is Kristen Bailey. I am serving as your state treasurer this year, and I'm excited about that. We have a couple of other board members. I see Jessica is on, Sierra is on, so they will be a good resource for us all during this meeting. I think we will probably, if you have like an urgent question that's about something I'm talking about, I am not fussed if you unmute and ask. I am going to move kind of quickly, like I said, so everybody can get back to their summer fun, but I'm happy to take questions, or you can put them in the chat if you would rather do that, and we can get to them at the end. So we are recording the meeting, just so everyone knows. As I'm moving through this presentation, know that we are going to post not only the slideshow, but also we are recording the meeting so that we can post that as well. So don't feel like you have to scramble around and take notes on anything. It'll all be available after the meeting. All right, so this is the treasurer training. If that is not what you intended to be in, then feel free to stay or feel free to disconnect if that was not what you were trying to join. It is not just for treasurers. It is for anyone who is in a leadership position in the PTA or considering a leadership position. It's just kind of good information for everyone to have. So I'm going to go ahead, assuming the technology cooperates with me, and share my screen so that y'all. No idea why it muted me, but that's fine. We'll just keep going. All right, I'm going to share my screen again and see if that works. All right, there we go. Look at that. If anyone cannot see that, if y'all can't see that, then somebody unmute and let me know. Okay, so, there we go. So we're going to break the presentation into just a couple of things, like your routine tasks, which are stuff you kind of take care of every month, and then the specialty tasks, which are a once a year kind of thing. Part of the duties of the treasurer, you need to primarily maintain a full account of all of your funds. So keep your unit on budget. When folks come and say, oh, but we really want to do this thing that's not in the budget, then you have to tell them, like, there's some steps required in order to make that happen. You're in charge of keeping up with the payments that need to be made, paying expenses, making deposits, all of those things. You really should be an active participant in your PTA board. You're not just the money girl or guy. You are there to kind of keep everybody informed, ensure that you are following all the guidelines from the IRS, and make sure that you're coordinating the financial reviews. Those are some of those more specialized things we'll talk about, but you are a voting member of the board, and you should be, actively involved in all of those things. So tasks that really should be happening right now or should have already happened. You need to update your authorized signers on your bank accounts. So some banks allow you to do that through e-sign. Some banks require you all to go together in person and take your driver's license and change everybody over. So check with your bank about their guidelines for how that needs to happen. Make sure that your insurance is current. This is like your AIM insurance or whatever your unit uses. You always want to make sure that that has been paid and is up to date. Your budget should have been approved by the general membership really in May, like the previous treasurer should have taken care of that, so that you have an active budget right now. That's how we get things done before we have meetings in the fall and are able to approve a budget. Your budget is a working document. There is nothing about it that is set in stone. It can always be revised. I will show you just an example. If you have not yet created a budget, and that is something that your unit still needs to do, here's just an example. It's really basic. It just gives you kind of the idea of what needs to be in your budget. So at the top, you've got the income, which is, I just put a few random categories. These are the things that make money. These are your fundraisers. And so for our example, our total is $21,105. Then you've got your expenses. And notice those two numbers in yellow should match because we are a nonprofit. So you should not be making money. Always your expenses and your income should be about the same, unless, of course, your unit is saving for a major purchase, like playground equipment. And so you're earmarking funds and rolling those over. But generally, those yellow boxes should match.
Kristen?
Yes.
Hey, we can't see the budget.
Can't see the budget. I wonder what that is. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing then. Pull it up. Thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome.
All right, let's share the screen and flip over to the example budget and try it that way. How about now?
Yes. Yes.
Hey, I swear Zoom has it in for me. Like some days it works, some days it doesn't. So I apologize. Thank you. So if everybody can see the budget, it makes a lot more sense what I'm saying. So you've got your income at the top, expenses down below, your two yellow boxes should match. Notice at the bottom, the membership dues. This is something that a lot of us do incorrectly. And so we're trying to make sure that, and it's important because it counts against your income. And for PTAs, if you are under $50,000 in gross receipts per year, then you can file that e-postcard, that Form 990N, which is like 6 questions and super easy. So we don't want anything to count as income that doesn't have to. And the dues that you collect that you then turn around and pay to state and national PTA, those don't count towards your income. So that's why they're pulled out at the bottom. And you can see those, you can how to calculate those. Again, all of this will be part of the presentation that'll be saved online, so you can take a look at this in more detail as you would like. All right, let's flip back over to our PowerPoint. The financial review, that's something that technically the outgoing treasurer is responsible for, but a lot of times it falls to the incoming treasurer because it happens right now. So if it has not been done for your unit, then make sure that you are taking care of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as one of our specialty tasks. The taxes need to be filed. This is one of the most critical things as a treasurer that you need to take care of, because if we don't file our taxes, then the IRS gets very fussy and they can actually take the nonprofit status, that 501c3 status, from every unit in the state of South Carolina. So one unit that's not in compliance can risk the nonprofit status of every unit in South Carolina. And so nobody wants to be that unit. So make sure that you are filing your taxes. And then filing and registering with the Secretary of State.
Right now, baby.
That should be done,
Okay,
or you should have a plan for renewing that. All right, so these are sort of your recurring duties, like I said, taking care of income, expenditures, monthly reconciliations, and treasurer's reports to the board. Receiving money in person. So utilize a cash box. You can talk to the event chair, you know, if it's your fall festival, how much are they going to need and in what denominations, you know, do you have things that are $1.50? If so, you're going to need a lot of quarters, you know, think through those things before an event so that you don't have a crisis during the event. What we want to do in order to get, this is a question a lot of people ask, is how do we get cash? How do we get seed money for our cash box? You need to write a check to the person who's in charge of the event, like your fall festival chair. It still needs to be signed by 2 authorized signers on your account. And then that committee chair cashes the check and gets the required denominations, whatever they need. You can't just, you're not supposed to have a debit card. So PTAs are not allowed to have a debit card. So you can't just go to the cash machine and get cash out for your cash box. You can't write a check to cash, which is something my mother still does. It cracks me up. And don't keep cash unless you are running a like daily store where you have like a school store you run every day, and that cash would need to be held in a cash box, like in a safe. So always use the cash counting sheet before and after events. I will show you one of those in case you are not familiar with it. So this is, it doesn't have to be this form. If you have a fancy one that has, you know, your school's logo or whatever you like on it, this is one that the PTA provides. You can see that you clearly denominate in the cash what kind of bills you have. You need to have 2 people counting money. Another misconception, these do not have to be board members. These can be, you know, PTA volunteers, but so 2 people count the cash and then it's received by the treasurer. So that's a 3rd count. And then when it is deposited to the bank obviously counts it as a 4th count. So that way we make very sure that all the cash is accounted for, that everybody is on the same page about how much money should be there. And really it just keeps everybody in the clear and keeps everything transparent, because that's the big thing with being treasurer. You want to make sure that you are reporting everything, that it's all very clear to anyone who wants to review the books, exactly what money is going in and out. There is a 2nd page to the deposit, which is any checks. So you want to list the last name, the check number, and the amount. And generally when we Xerox those, we do them front and back so that we can keep those together. All right, so we'll flip back to our little presentation. So when you're receiving money electronically, this is something we do a whole lot more now than we used to. Venmo, Cash App, things like that are not supposed to be used by PTAs, primarily because it violates those companies' users agreement. If you do it and they find out, they can close your account, which then creates a whole hassle if you've got, you know, Venmo codes out there or whatever. They also don't have the same reporting processes and security in place that the PTA requires. Credit card apps like Square, PayPal, all of that is absolutely fine. So you just need to make sure that you know when the money comes into Square exactly what it's for.
Oh my gosh, they took forever.
Selling memberships or spiritware at the same time, like all of our back to school things. If you set those up as items in your store, that way it'll help you track so you know how much to credit to your merchandise folks versus how much needs to go into membership. All right. So making in the recording deposit, the deposit form we talked about is the best way to do that. So you can keep documentation. As a treasurer, and like I'm all about the environment, but as a treasurer, I will kill a tree because I love paper copies of everything. I want to have hard copies so that anything that I'm looking for, if there's any question about what came in or out, that I have receipts for all of that. So that's really important. You need to make sure that you attach the documentation to the deposit form. So when you go to the bank and they give you a little receipt for your deposit, staple that to your deposit form and put it in your files. Cash can never be taken home. And the reason for this is if somebody breaks into your car and steals the cash box, all of a sudden all the money is gone. And although you know you didn't do anything wrong, it's too easy for people to go, well, I wonder if it was really stolen. Nobody needs that. So don't take the cash home, make sure it gets deposited, or if your PTA has a safe that is secured in like your PTA office or in your front office at your school, then it's fine. If it's really late, you can't get to the bank, whatever, it can be secured that way, but it should never be taken home. The other thing that comes up sometimes is depositing PTA funds. They can only go into a PTA account. You can't, if your booster club is selling t-shirts, you can't collect money for them, put it in the PTA account, and then write one check to the booster club. Commingling the funds is not okay. You can't put PTA funds in anybody else's account. So they can't go into your personal account and then you write a check back to the PTA. You need to make sure you always keep those separate. All right, expenditures. So we have people we need to reimburse and companies that need to get paid. All the payments need to match an approved budget line item. So if somebody comes up with a great idea, but it's not in your budget, you need to amend the budget. We can't just write checks to people because they had a great idea and everybody wants to do it. You need to amend the budget first so that everyone agrees that that's the thing you want to do. All disbursements and payments have to be approved. Check your bylaws and standing rules to confirm. Sometimes it's the treasurer, sometimes it's a board member, the president. So make sure that you're doing it the way your school is set up to do it. You can't make payments to the school for unbudgeted expenses. This comes up a lot too. If you get to the end of the year and your fundraiser was like a raging success and you have $10,000 extra dollars, you can't just cash out your account at the end of the year and write a check to your school for 10 grand because that's, again, not budgeted. So the membership hasn't had a chance to say, okay, I agree, that's how I'd like the money I donated to be used. So you can write a check to the school, but just not for an unbudgeted expense. So that's often confusing to people. And don't pay bills by cash. That seems kind of self-explanatory because I don't know a company that'll let you pay them by cash anymore. So that should not be a problem. I'll show you the reimbursement form. Again, this is, you can use it. You're not required to.
I'm sorry, could I interrupt with a quick question?
Of course, please go ahead.
I'm driving or I would have typed and not interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yes, no, definitely.
When you mentioned the co-mingling of funds, like you couldn't hold on to money for another organization in the school.
Right.
I'm the new treasurer, so I wasn't part of it before, but I came into, they're doing that already. There's a balance that's being held. We do have it on the books separately. What do I do at this point? Should I do a transaction to get that out and back that out? What's the best thing from a transparency standpoint to do there if you come into that situation?
Part of that depends on like whether it started, because I know sometimes we lose kind of the history behind something that's going on. So it would be important to find out, what is it originally a PTA item and the funds are being held by PTA? Were they raised by PTA, or was it something the school was doing? So find out kind of the history on that. And then yes, probably the easiest way to do that is to create a payment form and just make sure that it's documented in your like board meeting minutes that, hey, we're taking this money out of the account that isn't supposed to be in the account in the first place. So that's probably your best bet on that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this was not a PTA thing. It was kind of like a individual teacher project. And I think we probably do need to remove it. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So,
all right, thank you.
Absolutely. Let me flip over to our check request. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I'm gonna get that out of the way. There we go. So this is the check request form. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
So you need to put who it's to and their information, describe what it is, the amount, the account to be debited. That's what budget line item is this associated with. So when you're tracking all of your expenses, you know, okay, this was a membership expense, or this was a teacher appreciation expense. The chair, the person, who's in charge of that activity, can sign it, and then your PTA president should sign it. The treasurer, notice this box down here. You need to put, date received and date paid, so you can track that, the amount, and it has check number. Obviously, if you paid this in some other manner, like your membership dues through MemberHub, you can simply write that in that line instead of a check number. Okay. All right. So let's flip back over to our presentation. So paying by check, use the form. You have to have receipts. I know a lot of times we ask for original receipts, which are always best, but sometimes it is going to be a printout of the, Amazon payment because they ordered on Amazon. So that's fine as well. 2 people must sign every check. So I recommend 3 and sometimes 4 signers on the bank account. Those people can't be related. So even if a husband and wife are serving on the board, it shouldn't be they shouldn't sign one another's checks. But as the treasurer, you often end up, paying for something and then getting reimbursed. So you need at least 2 other people who can sign checks to you. Obviously, you would never do it for yourself, so don't give out blank checks or don't sign them and not fill them out. You need to know before you hand over a check that it's been filled out in its entirety and signed by 2 people. Credit cards. This is confusing to a lot of people. Credit cards are allowed. There are apparently some banks that will offer a credit card specifically for nonprofits. Each cardholder signs a credit card agreement, and even if you're using a credit card to do a transaction, 2 people still need to authorize it. So you still need to use that payment form and have it documented. And don't share the credit card. If your PTA has one for the president, one for the treasurer, don't hand it out. You need to be the folks who are authorized on them need to be the ones who use them. Again, debit cards, ATM withdrawals are not allowed. I know this continues to be an issue with debit cards and a lot of folks not accepting checks for payment. So it's something that state PTA continues to have discussions about. Electronic payments are fine. Again, you just need to maintain your documentation. Recurring or automatic electronic payments, as long as your board is comfortable with that, like auto pay, bill pay through your bank is fine as well. And again, it's all about documentation. As long as you have clear documentation, you're good. So again, back to those national, state, district dues. Each year, we pay $1.25 to the state and $2.25 to national PTA per member. Only the local dues. So if you have $5 is your dues amount, $1.50 is local income that gets included in your income. And the rest of it, again, is funds held for others and is considered a liability as opposed to income. So it doesn't count towards your $50,000 cap. District dues vary by district. So if you're not sure, check with your district board president to see if there are any district dues. Okay, reconciliations. This is critical. This is something that you need to do every single month. And it makes your financial review so easy. I did one yesterday. It took like 30 minutes because the treasurer had kept all of her records. She had done her reconciliation every month, and it was like a no-brainer. So the way you do this is you take the bank statement and you put it with all of your forms, your deposit forms and your payment forms for the month. And you check off that everything that's listed on the bank statement has an associated payment or deposit form. So this way you make sure that all your funds are accounted for correctly. It also, if there's an error on the bank side or on your accounting side, you catch it quickly when everybody still remembers what was it that happened with that. So doing this every single month is essential. If you're using QuickBooks, then there's a reconciliation report that is available as part of that software, and you can just run that. You need to share that every month with your board. So you need to do kind of a little update report. Let me show you two things. Really, being organized is the key to being treasurer. It's not hard. You just have to kind of make sure that you are a little bit organized. And I'll show you that you can, whatever works for you is fine. I was setting my treasurer files the other day, and so I just took a picture so that you could see. I use sometimes a box, with a hanging file, has all 12 months. So our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30. And then I just have a folder in each month for deposits and payments. That allows me to keep everything organized. As soon as I get it, I put it right in the folder. And that way I can go back and pull any month and clarify what was going on in that month. So those are, I'll just show you this. So there you go, payment folder, deposit folder in each monthly file. You can do this a ton of different ways. You can use a 3-ring binder if you like, with dividers. However it works for you is absolutely fine. We've had units who have come with like a shoebox full of receipts and maybe 9 of the 12 bank statements. This is not good financial practice, y'all. Do not do this. If you just set up a system that works for you and stay on top of it, it really makes it so easy. And so for your monthly reconciliation, again, you can do it however it works for you, but here's an example. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so what I do is this is what I call my budget snapshot. This is what I provide at the board meetings every month that says, okay, where are we with where we thought we were going to be, our budgeted amounts and our actual income and expenses, is everything on track? So once you've done your reconciliation, you can fill this in. So this here is the original part of the budget, like we showed just a minute ago. And then this tracks, where are we really? And down at the bottom, it gives you your year-to-date income and expenses, the current bank balance, which again, should always match your bank statements. It is fine. We used to say that you had to open the bank statements, like you had to get a paper copy, open the bank statements. People had to sign that they had opened it. We recognize that a lot of folks just turn off paper statements and access it through their bank's website. They log into their account to get those and print them out. That's fine. I know it's still in some of the standing rules in some of our units, but getting electronic statements, as long as you are doing this monthly reconciliation, is fine. And if you do the monthly reconciliation, when it comes time to do your financial review, it really is so easy. All right, so we'll flip back over just a few more things and then we'll talk a bit and take some questions. So the treasurer's report, again, must be presented at every general membership meeting. So that same budget snapshot, that update of like, where are we with our financials is important. You'd need to be sharing it. If anybody requests, any member of your PTA says, I would like to see the books, they're entitled to see that. They're a member of your organization and they contributed to the money that's in the account. So they have every right to look at the books. The report should include your current balance in the bank account, your budget versus your actual, any dues that you've taken in. So, but again, however you like to present that, whatever works for your population is fine. So specialty tasks, these are the things you don't have to keep an eye on every month, which in some ways makes them harder because they can kind of get away from you. So the financial review, that is something that should be happening right now, if it hasn't already. As soon as the books close June 30th, you can conduct the financial review. For our new treasurers, I would recommend that you recruit your people in May and say, hey, in July, I need 3 of you to get together and do a financial review. It won't take long. We can have coffee and do it around my dining room table, whatever works. But go ahead and get that set up before the end of your year. That way you don't have people who kind of wander off over the summer and then it doesn't get done and then fall starts and everybody forgets. So the financial review, I will quickly show you those forms in case you are not familiar with them. We're thinking about kind of revamping them, or maybe I don't have them up. Let's see. Oh, I do here there. Thinking about revamping these a little bit to make them a little more clear. But it is a fillable PDF and you can get it on the South Carolina PTA website. It just, excuse me, asks questions of your reviewers, and you can use 3 volunteers or 1 CPA, certified public accountant, to do the review. So either one of those. The only requirements for your volunteers is that they were not authorized check signers on the account, because obviously it doesn't count if you're reviewing your own books. And they can't be related. So my husband can't conduct the financial review for my unit. But so you fill out the forms and they just check that everything seems to be in order. And then they do a little bit of math to make sure all of your beginning and ending numbers come out correctly. It's just an important way that we double check to make sure that there's nothing funny going on. And it does happen. We would like to think that it doesn't, but every now and then, you know, there's fraud and there is sometimes just confusion. There's bad record keeping. It's, you know, again, the shoebox of receipts and the handful of bank statements and no organization. But this financial review allows us to catch that before it gets out of hand. So that's an important part of your responsibilities for the year.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I am the new treasurer. I'm also a CPA. Can I do the financial review for the prior year? Or is that a conflict?
Were you authorized on the account
No.
last year?
No.
Then if you put your professional hat on, because we're obviously all moms and have other work hats and PTA hats, if you were doing it in the course of your business, that's fine, as long as you were not authorized on the account.
Thank you.
And everybody make note because she could do your funding. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so again, the tax filing, the IRS Form 990 tax filing. If your unit, again, takes in less than $50,000 per year, and they say that the way the IRS phrases it is normally has less than 50 grand a year. That means if you look back at the last 5 years, and at least 3 of your 5 have not had more than $50,000, you can fill out that 990N, which I did it for the unit the other day, and it was like literally 6 questions. Super easy. If you have more than that, you fill out the slightly longer form, but again, still not complicated, but that has to be done by November of each year. And you can go onto the IRS website and go to the charities and nonprofit section and put in your EIN number, which is your tax ID number for your unit. Every unit has their own. Make sure you're using your correct EIN number when you fill out your taxes. But you can check and make sure that the prior years have been filed. And if not, then you will want to catch up on those, because again, the IRS gives a lot of grace to nonprofits. But if they have not been filed for consecutive years, then as I mentioned, the IRS gets very fussy and they will start taking people's nonprofit status. So Secretary of State registration, this is another important one we'll talk a little bit more about. The rules have changed a tiny bit, and it used to be there were lots of opportunities for exempting from having to register, and that is not true anymore. So now all PTA units need to register. There's also a South Carolina sales tax exemption. This is optional, but it is something to consider if you have a school store where you go to Costco and buy volumes of things to then resell in your school store. You might want to get your South Carolina sales tax exemption, which allows you to not pay sales tax at Costco when you purchase the items. Uploading your compliance documents to GiveBacks, which is Member Hub. If y'all didn't happen to see the announcement, they changed their name. nothing else changed. So of course we all panicked when we're like, what? You're changing? All the buttons are the same. The color and the name are the only things that's changed. And they really did it in response to all of the requests that PTAs have made to add this and add that. They were like, well, it's really not just Member Hub anymore. It's now all kinds of giving back to the community. So anyway, make sure you're getting those compliance documents. Just filing their 990 and doing your financial review is great, but you have to say we did it and upload it to GiveBacks. So the financial review, you just saw those forms. It's make sure you get it completed as soon as you've got that June bank statement. This basically is the same information we just covered. This again, file your tax. It is essential. And in this presentation, you can get instructions. They'll be hyperlinked there. Again, registering with the Secretary of State. So there's a registration statement. So if your unit has never registered with the Secretary of State, then you'll want to go to that registration statement. And each year you submit either a copy of your 990 or fill out the Secretary of State's this annual financial report, which has essentially the same information on it. It's a $50 annual fee to renew. So you'll want to build that into your budget. And all of it can be done online now, which is really nice. We used to have to print it and cut the check and mail it to this. Anyway, you can do it all online. And it's not complicated. It really is fairly self-explanatory, but it is now there are very few of our units, if any, that would exempt. So everyone needs to register. And this is probably new to a lot of our units, but again, not hard. And I'm here to help. So you can always contact me and say, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to put in this box. And we can walk through that together. As I mentioned, the sales and use tax, this is confusing for a lot of people. Like, well, why should we have to pay tax? We're tax exempt. Well, we're exempt from federal income tax, but we're not exempt from paying sales tax, like the 6% they add when you purchase groceries or whatever. So this applies only to items purchased by your unit for resale. So these are the snacks at Costco or whatever. It does not apply to things purchased by your unit for your own use. So if you buy folders for all the back to school packets, when you go to Staples and buy those, you are not entitled to not pay sales tax to Staples for those. The form that you complete, this ST10 form, again, not particularly difficult. It just has to be filed. You can do it online, but it does typically take 45 to 60 days to get it processed before they will send you the form that you would have to take to Costco to say, see, we are exempt from paying your sales tax. And most of the Costco and Sam's kind of places do require that form to be on file for them to not charge you sales tax. So if that's important to your unit, you want to go ahead and get on that. All right, resources, the PTA kit, SCPTA's website, which we're working on, y'all. I know it's not the easiest thing to use, but your district president or treasurer, if your district has one, the office at scpta.org, you can send any questions about anything to that. And our wonderful secretary, Kitty, will get back to you. And you can also contact me, which is just kbailey at scpta.org. I try to answer my emails really quickly, same day. If it's been more than a day or two and you haven't heard back from me, then definitely you should call me. My number is on the website. You know, I'm always happy to answer questions. Unless I'm in the middle of something with my kids, I'll pick up the phone. So I am going to pop into the chat right quick and see if we are answering questions.
One question from way back was from Carrie, who had asked, can treasurers be one of the counters?
Oh, one of the two people counting?
Yes, after a fundraiser and events.
It's not, if you can find other people, that's really better. We require 3 counts. But when you think about it, the 2 people and the treasurer make 3 and the bank is 4. I know it is hard to get volunteers, y'all. People are busy. We are still coming back from COVID and not everybody's kind of engaged like they used to be. So ideally you would have 2 people count and then the treasurer, but sometimes that doesn't work. And you can have the treasurer count with a second person and the treasurer signs off on it and the bank then provides the 3rd mandatory count of the money. So again, not ideal, but realistic. Sort of like we always encourage you to issue receipts for everything. But if you are selling Chick-fil-A biscuits in the car line in the morning, issuing receipts is going to make your principal crazy, along with all your parents. So it's not practical. So we're trying to be transparent, good bookkeepers, but also not make life impossible.
You had several people who would like to see a copy of the budget spreadsheet again, and if you'd share that again.
Absolutely. So I will do the snapshot, since that has all of the budget information, as well as there we go, that should be up. So that has all of our anticipated income and anticipated expenses. One thing I will note, I include, so for your budgets, if you're going to put together your budget for this year, don't be too specific. You want to be able to, you want your membership to be able to look at the budget and go, I know what we're doing for fundraising and I understand what we're spending our money on. That's important. But you do not want to be so specific that you've allocated, $4.12 to pencils. Because then if you want to deviate from that, you've got to revise your budget. So broad categories that encompass what you're doing are the way to go. Because that way, if you need to shift, expenses are higher, there's wiggle room in there. The president's and principal's discretionary funds are allowed. These are, for lack of a better word, slush funds for those unanticipated things. They should not be a substantial portion of your budget, but having some money in there that when there's a group coming to tour your school for an accreditation meeting and you'd like to provide them with lunch or mugs or something, then there's money in there to make that happen. So it allows you to be a little more responsive because things come up during the year. So those are two, I think, important things, and try to remember to include reasonable estimates of your other expenses. With COVID, we found that what we thought were reasonable estimates aren't always. So that, again, this budget is not meant to be set in stone. It may need to be revised several times during the year. And now that we can vote on it electronically through GiveBacks, it makes that whole process easier. You don't have to assemble a group and have enough people for quorum and do it all in person.
We had a question that do PTOs have to do the Secretary of State registration too?
Yes, as nonprofits, I would imagine that they do. I have not looked at that specifically for PTOs, but all nonprofit organizations should register with the Secretary of State.
Then we had a couple questions about where this video will be available, and that I can answer. scpta.org. Click on Leader Resources, and then there is a tab for leadership training webinars, and that's where all of our videos will be posted.
And it will include not only the video, but sometimes I'm just in a hurry and I want to flip through just the slides and I don't need all the extra talking. So we're going to post both. So you will have the presentation that we've looked at, as well as the video recording. In case you're like, somebody said something about that, you can go back and find that as well. Family members, school employees be counters. Okay, I can address that for Greenville County. I think it's the same, but school employees for Greenville County, and I think most districts, are not allowed to handle PTA money. This is not because we don't trust them. They are amazing. It is for their safety, because if there is a question about the finances for a PTA volunteer, then it's just a question for the volunteer, whereas school staff could lose their jobs over the suggestion of some sort of impropriety with the finances. So we can't put them in that position. It's not fair. So they should not be handling PTA money in any sense. They should not be taking ticket money. They should not be serving as a counter of the PTA funds. They should not be handling PTA money. That should be PTA volunteers. Family members as a counter, absolutely. Bless my husband, he has sat in the back room after many an event and helped count money. So that's fine. He's a member of our organization, so he is absolutely able to do that.
Excuse me, can I ask a quick question?
Please do.
So we are a PTSA.
Yes.
So our students are, I assume, are unable to handle money as well? And even,
Yes.
okay, okay,
Even though they are members of our organization because they are not adults. And even our few, we have some seniors who are 18 and we're like, could we use them?
right.
Not a great idea.
Okay.
Again, for much the same way as we just don't want to put them in a position that there's any question, much like our staff, our school staff. So
Not
you
giving
can
them
do-
any liability. Got it.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, and AIM gets a little fussy if we've allowed the 14-year-old to count money and then it goes missing. All right, let me scroll through and see if there's anything else. Oh, good question. Treasurer of a PTA and a substitute teacher. Again, I can answer this for Greenville County, District 1, but I'm not 100% sure about the other counties. You would want to check with someone at your district. Oh, you're in Greenville County, so that's easy enough. If you are a part-time sub, not a long-term sub, then it's okay. But if you switch over and you're doing like a long-term sub for somebody's pregnancy or they're out on family leave and you're going to be there for 4 months, then you can no longer count money. So you could serve, it depends on how active your board is. If you have 3 others authorized signers, I mean, you could make it work for the time that you were long-term subbing to be the treasurer and not actually be counting money, but it would be a little challenging. So let's see what else. Y'all have great questions. Y'all are with it this morning. Early, it's summer, and y'all are all here and asking great questions. How do I get access to the dues portion of Member Hub? As the treasurer, if your officers have been updated for the 23-24 school year, then as the treasurer, when you were put in as treasurer, you should have access to all of that. If you do not, check with your PTA president and make sure that the officers have been updated. I know it's kind of that funny in-between time. You couldn't put them in too early, but now they need to be in, or you don't have access to the things you need. So check on that. And if you still can't get access, let me know and we'll work through that together. Let's see. Anybody else? Have I gotten everything? If I have missed your question, it is not intentional. Please feel free to unmute and ask. Yes, the presentations will be available. You can forward the link to anybody and feel free to share. The more people who know this information, again, our goal is to be as transparent as possible. If anyone wants to look at the books, if anyone has a question about what was spent and why and how, then you need to be very willing to just say, oh yeah, absolutely, let's sit down and talk about it. I'm happy to go over that. See a hand raised. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I wanted to ask, I know you touched on the debit cards and we talked about this last year too, and it's a little disappointing because it doesn't sound like the story's changed much. And this is my second year staying in the treasurer role. This is kind of like the most annoying part to me, is chasing the signatures for the checks and chasing the signatures for all the forms. That would just be, I mean, to me, it's kind of like a no-brainer where it's 2023, like, come on. Is there anything you can share? Is there anything that we can do as treasurers to say, like, this is a volunteer part, right? I mean, I work a full-time job, so we should try and make it as simple as possible. And to me, it's kind of a no-brainer that debit cards would be allowed with all of the forms and the checks and balances we have in place.
Yes, and I will tread lightly here because I was sort of on the forefront of we really need to figure out a way to do this movement. So taking my state treasurer hat off. So as your state treasurer, it is not allowed currently.
Mm-hmm.
As a PTA mom, huge pain in the butt, really huge. I mean, when I need to buy stuff and they're not gonna, I mean, Amazon's not gonna take a check. You can't mail it to them. They don't care. I mean, that's not happening. So having a debit card for the PTA would be immensely helpful. I understand there's a credit card option, but none of the banks in my area that are, conveniently located will issue a credit card to the organization. It must be an individual. And so you've either got to reapply for a credit card and then it's on my personal credit account, which is not great because then what if something happens? I'm personally responsible. Not all treasurers are comfortable with that. And you're right, as we have begun to allow electronic payments and we make electronic payments through givebacks for membership dues, it does seem like we should be able to figure out a way to make this work. Fortunately, we have Jessica on the call, who is our fantastic president-elect. So I think Jessica may be able to let us know if we're going to continue having these discussions. This is something I believe that's coming down from National PTA. There is a higher risk of fraud with this. Once you have a debit card, you know, it's instant access to the funds, whereas with a credit card, you know, you decide when the money comes out of your account when you pay the bill. So there's that extra sort of waiting period where if something has gone wrong, if somebody has gotten a hold of the credit card, they don't even know it's been lost, whatever, there's that extra protection. But many of our financial institutions are now applying those protections to debit transactions because so many people use them. So I definitely think it's an ongoing issue, but I agree with you. It is making things rather challenging.
Hi. So we actually did do we did a bunch of research a couple of years ago. And you're right, Kristen, it is challenging, and there is more fraud with debit cards. And of course there are ways around it and rules, and then we're just going to have more, you know, more forms to fill out and things like that. But I think this is definitely something that we can come back to. We're a new board right now on the state level. And I think we've got new people on and new ideas. So I definitely think that this is something that we can come back to and discuss this year. And if y'all have ideas or anything like that, you know, we're always open to that. So you can email any of us for sure.
Yes, that's a great point, Jess. There's, you know, we definitely are trying to be responsive to the needs of the units. And if you don't tell us, we don't know. So I really appreciate you bringing it up. This is something that, like I said, I was pushing for because I think it, you know, we're in the trenches and we're all volunteers, and we've got to make life as easy as possible while still maintaining the integrity of the finances. So, but we're creative. I mean, you know, we're PTA members. We can come up with something that should work. So look for more discussion, and feel free to provide input on this and any other issue that y'all are facing. Because again, if nobody says anything, it just continues, and it's kind of like everybody's annoyed and nobody's talking about it. All right, let me just scroll through, see if there's anything else in the chat. All right, anybody else? Oh, look, we're so good. We're not even at 10 o'clock yet. Does anybody else have questions? We will try and get, like I said, all these things posted, both the recording and the slideshow, as well as the forms that I flipped back and forth to. We'll get those up there as well, so you can see and use them. Feel free to, again, take them, make them your own, revise them, disregard them, whatever. As long as you're keeping the books, keep them however it works for you. Oh, here's one: making PTA participation more accessible for working parents. Oh, that's a good point. Making sure that there's opportunities for everyone to be involved. You know, lots of folks are working full time now, which did not used to be the case. So that's a really great point. Not much training from our previous treasurer. Do you need a new login? You will need your own login for for givebacks. I'm still trying to get used to it, y'all. For givebacks, for SCPTA, a checklist about new board. That's a great idea. So y'all remember, if you are an incoming treasurer and you feel like, okay, I didn't get anything and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, don't do that to the next person. Make sure that you do turnover with all of your documents, all of the logins and passwords, I keep what I call a critical information document. So that's got my EIN on it. It's got our mailing address for the unit. It's got all the logins for like the IRS site and the Secretary of State site. Make sure that you are tracking that in one central place and handing it over to the next person, because that's just kind. If you are not getting that and you have questions about, I don't know what to do with this or that, please feel free. Again, it's kbailey@scpta.org. Reach out to me anytime. Again, my cell phone number is on the website as well. So if you have specific questions about, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing because our treasurer moved and she didn't tell me anything, then let me know. Okay, I see. Yeah, somebody's got a hand up. Yeah.
Trying to get get unmuted for you. I had a question that was it accidentally got overlooked regarding e-signatures. So aside from cash items or cash counting, are e-signatures acceptable if we need other members signatures to sign off on reports or anything like that, being we are so busy and again, chasing somebody down just to get a signature. Obviously cash items have to be in person, but otherwise.
You are entirely correct. That is one of the good things. Our good COVID keeps was we had to figure out, since we couldn't get together, how to get that done. So there are tons of both free and pay for use apps out there that you can use in order to get secured e-signatures. So yes, not for cash counting. You can't take a picture of the cash and sign off on it, but for other things, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Kristen, can I ask you 2 quick questions?
Please do.
Okay, just to clarify one point that I think might have changed for the better. You said that bill pay is fine to use as long as there's documentation, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Because I think a couple of years ago when I was a treasurer, there was still some question on that. So I'm glad that that is allowed now. And then the other thing, when I was treasurer a couple of years ago, when we needed to fill a cash box, we would just use a cash box request form, document it, and collect our cash for the event. And then when we redeposit it in the bank, just make a note that we were basically taking off of the earnings the original cash that had been in the box. We did it all with cash without writing anybody a check. Is that no longer allowed?
And how did you obtain the cash?
We had 2 treasurers, and one of them would just go to the bank and withdraw cash.
Just at the counter?
Yeah,
like write a check to cash?
I don't think they actually made us write a check to cash. I think they would just let us use a like the opposite of a deposit ticket. Oh,
Okay,
well,
yeah,
withdrawal
that is not something, again, it's sort of like, a withdrawal ticket or writing a check to cash. It's just hard to track. And the IRS doesn't like it when there are, there's sort of cash floating around and it's not clearly gone to someone for something.
Okay.
So that was one of the things that, nonprofits kind of got dinged for several years ago by the IRS. And they said, okay, don't do that. Make sure that it's just cleaner in your books if you write a check to a person and let that person cash it. That way on the payment form, you can clearly designate, this is the Spring Circus cash box payment. But that is something important to note, and I'm glad Erin mentioned this, that when you are depositing the money that you've had for an event, make sure that you pull that cash box cash back out. That's not income from your Spring Fling Carnival. That is the money that you took out and it goes back in. So it's a zero sum. So make sure that you aren't crediting to your Spring Carnival income that is more than what they earned, because then next year's Spring Carnival chair thinks, how come they earn so much money? Oh no, I don't want to do this. I can't make that much money. Oops, like that was $5,000 in cash. So make sure that you're pulling that out and separating it as cash box out and cash box in. All right, any other questions? I know that you guys have lives and I appreciate so much. I really can't tell you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to serve in your communities and in your schools. We are truly here to be a resource. If you have questions, if something seems off about your finances, we are not the police. We are not here to judge you. We are really here to help you fix whatever it is. So don't ever be afraid to say, I'm not sure about this, something seems off. Let's just dive in and fix it together. So it's really not to judge. It's just because we're all volunteers. So we're all got to kind of work together to make all of this work well. So don't ever hesitate to call and say, I need some help with something. That's why we're here. Anybody last minute questions? Otherwise, we will call it a day. All right. I don't see anything. Thank you again, all of you, for being here. Contact me anytime you need anything. All right. Have a great day.